The 99% of cubers spend hours upon hours solving and solving, yet don't see any improvement, while the 1% practice strategically and in the same time improve so much more than everybody else. The difference? The 1% know these 4 steps, and I want to share them with you, because in my blindfolded solving journey, where I went from 300th in the world to 3rd in the world in just 5 months, I learned a lot about improving as fast as humanly possible. So if you stick around to hear out these 4 steps, then you could be a part of the 1% that improves so fast it feels like cheating. Alright, let's get going. The first part to improving super fast is to fix your fundamentals.
I hate fundamentals.
So boring.
Yeah, I know it's boring, but you are seriously slowing yourself down if you skip this. For example, in a sport like sprinting, sprinters put a lot of emphasis on training their fundamental technique. They make sure to do the basics right, like high knees and pumping your arms, because if they don't have them down pat, then they aren't going to be able to improve as fast as they want. And the same goes for cubing. If you don't have your fundamentals down, then you won't be able to improve as fast as you want. If you aren't efficient enough, then you will just be doing too many moves to possibly solve fast. Or if your turning isn't smooth and is really locky, then you could be losing tenths of a second on shorter events or even whole seconds on longer events. And if you don't have good look ahead or no good algorithms, then you could be losing even more time. And also, if your inspection isn't good, then you could be losing a lot of time when pausing after doing what you've planned. But it is hard to tell how you are going with each of these fundamentals. So this is where step 2 comes in. Now this is probably the biggest thing that separates the 99% from the 1%. Which is soon to include you as long as you follow along with these 4 steps. But for now, the second step is to analyze your solves. See, there's no point just guessing what you're good at and spending heaps and heaps of time working on something that you're already really good at, whilst there's another fundamental that you're not as good at that's holding you back from improving super fast. For example, if your solves look like this, then there's no point trying to turn smoother because you're just doing way too many moves to even solve fast anyway. So then how do you know what to work on? How do you analyze your solves? Well, it sounds fancy, but it's actually pretty simple. First of all, you want to set up a camera and film some regular solves from either a front on or over the shoulder angle. And you don't want to be looking at your PB solves, so make sure they're just some average solves. And then you want to watch them back and take a look at where you're making mistakes or doing things poorly. Now you might think that you won't be able to spot mistakes in your own solves, but most people look back at videos of their solves and think, yucky. So it shouldn't be too bad, and it should be relatively obvious what you need to work on. For example, when I look back at my 3x3 solves, I notice that my turning isn't quite good enough, it gets a bit locky at times, and also my inspection is lacking. If I want to get sub 7, which is what I'm aiming for, then I really need to be planning first 2 pairs every single time. But most of the time I just plan 1 pair. But the issues with your solves could be completely different to mine. They could be look ahead or efficiency or even something else. Great, now we know what our weaknesses are. But what now? Because obviously just knowing what your weaknesses are doesn't improve them. The 99% here would just do solves, solving and solving, ingraining the same bad habits that are keeping them slow. But we don't want to be them. We want to be the 1%. The 1% that improves so fast, it only takes months to do what others do in years. And this can be done through steps 3 and 4. But for now, step 3 is targeted practice. So if we go back to the sprinting analogy again, 100-meter sprinters don't just run 100 meters again and again. They practice different parts of their run, like they might practice their acceleration, or they might go a little bit slow to work on their form. And the same should apply to cubing. You shouldn't just be solving and solving and hoping that something will change, because if your fundamentals aren't good, you won't be improving like you could. And I'll get to what these targeted practice drills could look like for you in just a moment, but first, here's an example of a targeted practice drill I did to really help my 3-blind memorization, and it really paid off in competition. You see, I noticed that my 3-blind memorization time was a little bit slower than what I would have liked it to be. And so my brother and my dad 3D printed and built this arm thing with a piece of paper on the end that flips out after a desired time. So I could set it to 5 seconds, and then 5 seconds after I started the timer and was memorizing, it would just flip down and I would have no choice but to have memorized the cube in 5 seconds. So this really effectively pushed my memorization to get faster and faster. And then at literally my next competition after practicing heaps with this, I got a solve that had pretty much exactly 5-second memorization, which is pretty cool. However, this is quite an extreme and crazy example, and your training definitely doesn't have to look like this, and most of mine doesn't either. This is just an example. For you, targeted practice could look like a variety of things, and you should get creative with this, as long as it works. But here's some widespread examples and well-known strategies to help improve your fundamentals. If you have bad efficiency, then you should first watch some example solves to learn the new better ways of doing things. And then the drill would be to do slow solves, trying to implement the new things that you've learnt. because if you were just doing regular fast solves, you wouldn't have time to implement the new things that you were less comfortable with, and you would default back to your old, inefficient ways. If you want to get smoother turning, then do some slow solves, having smooth and accurate turning, and then slowly speed up over time. If you don't have good look ahead, then once again the solution is slow solves, but you need to be careful to be focusing on the next pair you're going to solve, and looking away from what you are currently solving. And you couldn't train this properly in normal solves because you're going too fast, so you have to do the targeted practice for it in slow solves. If you learnt bad algorithms, then the targeted practice could be learning new ones and then training them in an algorithm trainer. And if your inspection is lacking, like I know mine is, then doing untimed inspection can be good. So taking as long as you need to just inspect up to where you need to, and over time you'll get faster. So for me, when trying to be sub 7, I need to practice planning 2 pairs. But for some of you who might be trying to get sub 20, it might be planning your entire cross, or if you're trying to get sub 10, it might just be planning the first pair. But either way, you should just take as long as you need to inspect up to where you should, and just do that heaps. So those are just some examples of drills you might do to improve some of your weaknesses, but be creative with this and come up with your own that help target your weaknesses that you found when recording your solves. Now the fourth thing that you can do to improve super fast is actually the thing that helped me the most when going from 300th in the world to 3rd in the world in just 5 months. And this is what I like to call learn and grind. You see, at a competition near the start of 2022, I averaged about 30 seconds for blindfolded with a method called 3-star. But if 3-star was all that I knew, then I would only be able to improve down to around about 20 to 25 seconds before I started plateauing and reaching some issues with improving more. But I didn't want to be stopped there. I wanted to be world class. I wanted to average 16 seconds, and I didn't want it to take years. Well, luckily, in 3-blind there's a method called floating, which is like an extension of 3-style that is quite helpful for trying to average under 20 seconds, and almost a necessity for averaging 17 or 16. So even though I averaged 30 seconds, I hunkered down and spent 2 months just learning this big new method as fast as I possibly could. And in this time, I didn't really do much just normal solving practice, so that I could just learn this new thing as fast as possible. So that way, once I knew it, I could literally just spam solves and repeat steps 1, 2, and 3 again and again until I averaged like 16. But how can you apply this to your improvement? Well, you can do a very similar thing. So firstly, you need to learn what you need to know to get to your desired speed, and then secondly, just grind solves. But I think the key is to really focus on learning that new thing as fast as possible before going on to grind a bunch of solves. It's just faster when you only have to focus on one thing at a time. Additionally, if you are learning something that completely changes the way you solve, like maybe F2L or OLL or PLL on 3x3 or maybe CLL on 2x2, then it's pretty necessary to do this anyway, because there's no point practicing heaps with your old slower ways when you're gonna have to come along and just change it all afterwards anyway. In general, learn super fast and then grind solves. So altogether, you first need to fix your fundamentals like efficiency, turning, look ahead, algorithms, and inspection, which is done by recording your solves and then targeting your weaknesses with specific targeted drills. And then finally, once your fundamentals are fixed, you need to adopt the mindset of learn and grind. Focus on learning what you need super fast and then grinding solves to get comfortable with what you just learnt, and you'll improve super fast. I really hope this video helps you improve as fast as possible. But what we don't want happening is for you to spend months and months practicing, but then when you get to a competition, to mess up under the nerves and have all the practice go to waste. So check out this video where I go through my best tips for competing well. Alright, see ya, thank you, have a good one.